capture a shock effect, but it doesn't prove or disprove the fact that this book could not have been written by a man. It had to have been a greater source. I hope everyone understands it. I can repeat that point again in case anyone needs to. But as I said, if you look in the Quran, there's nothing in the Quran which disagrees with established modern scientific fact, though that is not being debated tonight, and I understand. Okay, having said all of that, I spent 16 minutes pretty much laying down the ground rules and basically laying down the logic which how we're going to use for tonight. So let me start with the first piece of evidence of the Quran, a statement. I'm going to give you 8 pieces of evidences, and these are 8 statements in the Quran which agree with modern scientific fact, which scientists have only discovered recently. Let me go ahead and start right here. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to break up my talk sort of in 2 different parts. I'm going to first tell you what science says, and then I'm going to tell you what the Quran says, and then we can go from there. Okay, this is what modern science has to say on the topic of zoology, in particular bees. We're going to be talking about bees over here. Today science tells us that the male bee has only one purpose, and that is to reproduce with a female. There's really no other purpose for a male bee. But, now here's the important point. However, the worker bee, or the soldier bee, is a female bee. She is the one that builds a nest, leaves her home, and goes out in search of food. This is what modern science has told us that we've discovered only recently. Now, it takes a specialist in the field to detect the sex of the bee. You cannot look at it from the naked eye. It is impossible. There's no way you can look at it that way. Now let me show you what the Quran says about bees. Now, keep one thing in mind here. In the Arabic language, animals are either male or female. There's no such thing as, in English we have, the word cow. There's a cow in the pasture. Well, that doesn't tell us if the cow is male or female. But in Arabic, animals are either male or female. There's no, gender-neutral term for animals. Okay, let's look inside chapter 16, verse 68. It says over there, and thy Lord taught the bee. Here it is specified a female bee to build its cells in hills, on trees, and in men's habitations, then to eat of all the produce and find with skill the spacious paths of its Lord. This is exactly what modern scientists today tell us, that the bee that goes out, that builds a nest, that goes out, looking for food, as what the Quran has mentioned, is indeed the female bee. That is a female bee. So anyways, I'll have to raise a question now. How did the author of the Quran know this scientific statement? That the bees that leave the nest and goes out in search of food is the female bee. Let's go back to the algorithm. Let's look. Perhaps the author of the Quran was a genius or a scientist, which is A and C. Well, I don't think that could be a possibility, because no matter how smart you are, you'll never be able to detect the sex of a bee. Unless you have these modern scientific methods, which did not exist 1,400 years ago, so those could not be a possibility. Let's look at F. Perhaps the scientific fact is observable. Well, this is not true either, because you cannot look at the bees and tell which one is a male or female. Let's look at B. Perhaps it's a very good guess. Well, it's a possibility. If it was a good guess, then we will say it's a 50-50 chance, 1/2 chance if that was the case, or a coincidence. We can also look at it that way. Now let's look at G here. I want to pause on this one for a second. The information already pre-existed in history, therefore the author of the Quran simply plagiarized from another source. Let's analyze this for just a second here. I want to bring up one of the books which were written much before the time the Quran was revealed, and that is the works of Aristotle. Because I think when we look at Aristotle's works here, it's going to give us some insight here, because he did some research